Hello, everyone. I am going to wait, about 30 seconds for everyone to pop in. Want to make sure everyone is here before we get started. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we have a lot to share in a limited amount of time with you today. So let's get started. Welcome, my name's Becky Whalen. I'm a speech language pathologist and an assessment consultant here at Pearson. I'm here with my colleagues, Deb Grill and Ellen Murphy, both school psychologists, who will be talking about using the digital assessment library for early childhood educators. Before we get started, I want to note that we are going to be using the Q&A feature today and not the chat box. So please, throughout the entire presentation, do not hold back. Please post your questions in the chat. We have a couple of colleagues working here as well to answer your questions as swiftly as possible. And we will have question and answers at the end. But as you're thinking of the question, please go move forward and post those questions in the Q&A box. We apologize that the slides were not sent before the session. We have a couple of supplementary materials as well. Some of the supplementary materials are going to be posted in the chat at the very end of the webinar. You can expect them during maybe the last 10 minutes. And then you will receive a follow-up email from our marketing team with those slides and with the supplementary handouts that we will provide. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to do a little bit of an administrative overview. We're going to walk you through the platforms in which we use the digital assessment library. We'll go through developmental assessments, achievement and readiness, cognitive assessments, behavior assessments, and then do speech, language, and OT assessments. And then we'll leave our last 5 minutes for questions. So let's talk a little bit about how we use the digital assessment library for schools. So the first component is Q Global. So Q Global is our web-based platform for scoring and reporting, as well as the administration of many assessments that are often self-administered and unproctored, like a questionnaire or rating scale. And these measures include assessments like the VASC-3, Vineland, and the Sensory Profile 2. So a link can be utilized to send to teachers or parents asking them to complete these tests without having to personally put them in the mail or send them home with the student. In addition, this platform houses the resource library for many digital manuals and stimulus books that can be utilized to administer the test on a one-to-one setting or via telepractice. And so Q Global allows your district to generate scores and reports on any internet-connected device, even for assessments that are administered using paper forms. Email a secure link to teachers, parents, or caregivers for convenient completion of assessments on their own device. Print select rating scales when digital administration is not an option, and access test manuals from school or home. So, I don't want to go into too much depth, but with your DALS subscription, you should receive free training for both of our platforms, for Q Global and for Q Interactive. And if you haven't received that training and you don't have the links to those modules, please feel free to email your state representative and we will get those out to you. All right, moving on, Q Interactive is our iPad-based assessment app. It's an intuitive portable system that uses 2 iPad devices connected through technology within the hardware to administer interactive assessments such as the Bracken or the Self Preschool in a one-to-one environment. So that means that no internet connection is required for the administration of assessments. And one of the greatest benefits that we've heard from our users is that their assessments are now more targeted than ever. And the immediate feedback that Q Interactive provides once a subtest is complete can help deliver a faster and more accurate read on where the student is and how they are progressing at any given time. And Q Interactive also allows examiners to adjust an individual battery in real time as the student is taking it. The iPads are connected by Bluetooth, and so that means that no internet connection is required for the administration of these assessments. Okay, so last but not least, I'm going to briefly talk about DALS Plus. So DALS Plus is a subscription that is separate and supplementary to DALS. It's all the great perks of our digital library, plus many of the assessments for which we do not have a digital administration. So with this innovative program, staff have access to everything they need to serve their students at a new level. So if your district subscribes to DALS Plus, you have unlimited use of protocols and response booklets for about 20 non-digital tests. So tests you can't use Q Interactive for, which includes access to all available digital manuals and stimulus books through the Q Global Resource Library, free shipping and handling for covered print materials, and 65% off of any kit purchases for all DALS products. So if the test that we're highlighting is available on DALS Plus, not DALS, the slide is going to be in green. So please be sure to check with your administrators if this is a feature that your district has. If you don't have it, these are always available to purchase in addition to just your DALS account. A lot of districts who do subscribe to DALS Plus, so we did want to highlight a lot of those tests. A lot of the early childhood assessments that we offer are really best suited for that paper and pencil administration, and we did not want to totally skip out on those because we really want you guys to maximize your understanding of everything that we have to offer here at Pearson. So I'm going to pass it along to Deb Grill, who's going to talk a little more about our developmental assessments.
Thanks so much, Becky. So these 4 assessments are going to be what we spend our next few minutes on. So you can click, please, Becky. All right. Before we get started, I just wanted to note this graphic is a great tool that compares the areas measured, assessment time, and administration and scoring options for 3 of our commonly used early childhood tools. This graphic is also available on our website under kindergarten entry assessment if you would like to access it after today's session. Next. All right. So to get started, the EZ3 is a brief developmental screening instrument that has a broad focus. It provides a sample of a child's language, cognition, fine motor, and gross motor functioning. It also includes a parent questionnaire, which looks at social development, educational history, and pertinent medical information that may impact a child in the educational setting. It's important to note that the EZ3 is not an IQ screener, and the items selected for the EZ3 primarily sample the domain of developmental tasks rather than the domain of specific accomplishments. So in other words, the EZ3 is intended to survey a child's ability to acquire skills rather than their current level of skill achievement and performance. The EZ3 tasks can be administered in approximately 15 to 20 minutes using a paper pencil format or a digital format online. The online administration uses Pearson's Q Global system, and the Q Global platform can also be used for scoring results from the paper pencil format. Okay. Thank you. The DAL4 provides an efficient way to screen large groups of children in the areas of motor, concepts, language, self-help, and social emotional skills. It's commonly used for kindergarten screening, pre-K screening, daycare screening, and screening children who join later in the year. Each performance area, including motor, concepts, and language, requires approximately 10 to 15 minutes for administration. The assessment provides scores for each of its 5 domains, offering total scores, percentile ranks, and standard scores. Additionally, it calculates a DAL4 total score based on the sum of motor concepts and language skills. While the motor concepts and language areas are individually administered, the DAL4 uses a unique stations approach that allows schools to quickly administer the DAL4 to a large group of children. So using this approach, schools set up an area with 3 stations, and a professional or paraprofessional administers that part of the test in each station, allowing 3 children to be tested at the same time. Parents or guardians can fill out the questionnaire while their child is being tested, or schools can send them a link to send send a link for them to fill out the questionnaire on Q Global. In terms of scoring, hand scoring obviously is a possibility, and Pearson also offers digital scoring through Q Global. Next. So the speed dial is very similar, and it offers an even quicker way to screen the areas of concepts, motor, and language skills. The speed dial contains shorter versions of the motor concepts and language areas, which are administered one-on-one to the child, and it includes the 10 core items from the Dial 4. Unlike the Dial 4, the speed dial does not have self-help or social emotional skills questionnaire, nor does it use the stations approach. Instead, one professional administers the whole speed dial to a single child in about 20 minutes. Again, hand scoring is utilized with the manual and record form, or you can score through the Q Global platform where a raw score is entered and a formal report is provided. Finally, in looking at our developmental assessments, the Bailey 4 is the most comprehensive assessment tool for determining developmental delays in children. It assesses infant and toddler development across 5 scales: cognitive, language, motor, social, emotional, and adaptive behavior. Assessment of the cognitive, language, and motor domains are accomplished by administering structured items to a child and engaging the caregiver to support responses where appropriate. The social, emotional, and adaptive behavior scales are administered via caregiver questionnaire, which allows them to share their own observations of the child's abilities. Administration time is approximately 15 to 25 minutes. And here again, we can utilize that hand scoring or Q Global for that formal report. Now that we've discussed the developmental tools, I'm going to review one of our unique assessments in the area of academic achievement. So the Bracken 4 4th edition includes both the Bracken School Readiness Assessment and the Bracken Basic Concept Scale. The Basic Concept Scale is a comprehensive assessment that examines basic concept development in children ages 3 years, 0 months to 7 years, 11 months. And the Bracken School Readiness Assessment is a screening tool for school readiness. Both the Bracken Basic Concept Scale and School Readiness versions involve simple individual test administration. The clinician administers the test to the child, often asking them to choose the answer from a selection of pictures. The child is allowed to point or state the number associated with their selection. And this limited expressive language requirement makes the tool especially useful for populations of children who have difficulty in this area. Next. The Bracken Basic Concept Scale is a developmental assessment designed to evaluate children's school readiness in terms of their understanding of basic concepts that are strongly related to the early childhood cognitive and language development, as well as early academic achievement. The Basic Concept Scale includes the 6 school readiness assessments and 4 additional subtests. This one differs a little bit because it can actually be administered on Q Interactive with our iPads, like Becky mentioned earlier in the presentation, or it can be completed with paper pencil and can be hand scored or scored on Q Global. Next. And the Bracken School Readiness Assessment is a briefer version of the Bracken Basic Concept Scale. The 6 subtests are designed to evaluate children's school readiness in terms of their understanding of those basic concepts. And those concepts are strongly related to their cognitive and language development, as with the Bracken Basic Concept Scale. The difference is it's those 6 subtests instead of the 10. Here again, the administration can be completed on Q Interactive, or it can be completed paper pencil and scored manually or on Q Global. And now I will hand it over to Ellen for our next section.
Thank you, Deb. Let's talk about the cognitive assessments commonly used by school psychologists that are in the early childhood library. Today, we're going to take a quick look at the WIPC, the KBCNU, the KBIT2 revised, and the DALS early years. Next slide, please. All right, we'll start with the WIPC, or the Weschler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence, 4th edition. It is an individually administered intelligence test for children aged 2 years, 6 months through 7 years, 7 months. It is used to assess cognitive abilities and intellectual functioning in young children. It provides scores in domains such as verbal comprehension, visual spatial, fluid reasoning, working memory, and processing speeds. The scores can be used to understand a child's strengths and weaknesses, inform educational planning, and identify potential learning disabilities or developmental delays. Next slide, please. The next test we're going to talk about is the Kaufman Assessment Battery for Children, Second Edition, NU. It is designed to measure cognitive abilities in children and adolescents ages 3 to 18 years. The KBC NU offers a broad theoretical base, making it an instrument of choice for cognitive assessment application, and the test provides detailed, accurate information and unprecedented flexibility. Its flexibility is because it's based on a dual theoretical foundation using the Luria neuropsychological model and the CHC approach. It is a very culturally fair test, which makes it a preferred measure for assessing diverse groups, especially bilingual or ESL. There's also a nonverbal scale that assesses cognitive abilities without relying on verbal skills, making it suitable for individuals with language difficulties or those from diverse linguistic backgrounds. It measures abilities such as problem solving, pattern recognition, and spatial reasoning through tasks involving visual puzzles, mazes, and other nonverbal stimuli. Best of all, children enjoy these tasks, and that is what makes KBC2 NU very unique because it engages children by using novel and colorful stimuli or manipulatives. It's very easy to administer this test battery. Examinees focus easily on the activities, so you know their results reflect their best efforts. The KBC is often used in educational settings, for clinical evaluations and research studies to assess cognitive functioning, identify strengths and weaknesses in different cognitive domains. Next is the KBIT-2. So this is the brief Kaufman Intelligence Test. It assesses verbal and nonverbal intelligence in individuals from ages 4 to 90. It is basically a brief version of the larger KBC. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the DALS. The DALS-2, the Differential Ability Scale, Second Edition, Early Years, is a version of the DALS-2 specifically designed for assessing the cognitive abilities of children in the early years of development, typically from 2 years, 6 months to 6 years, 11 months of age. It provides a comprehensive assessment of cognitive abilities across various domains, including verbal, nonverbal, and spatial abilities. And the DALS Early Years includes age-appropriate tasks and materials tailored to young children's developmental levels. Next, please. All right, now let's talk about the behavior assessments. We're going to cover the BAS-3, the Brown Executive Function Attention Scales, the Vineland-3, and the Social Skills Intervention System, the Social Emotional Screening Component. All right, the BAS-3, it is a multi-method, multi-dimensional system used to evaluate behavior and self-perceptions of children from ages 2 to 21-11. It is widely used in clinical and educational settings to evaluate various aspects of children's behavior, emotions, and social functioning. The BAS includes several components. There's the rating scales that are completed by parents, teachers, and sometimes the child themselves. They assess various aspects of behavior, emotions, and social functioning. There's a self-reported personality for older children, ages 6 and up. There's a structured developmental history that is completed by parents or caregivers to gather information about the child's developmental history. There's an observation system that involves direct observation of the child's behavior in a structured or unstructured setting. So the BAS-3 provides a wide range of domains, and it measures things like externalizing behaviors, internalizing behaviors, adaptive skills, social skills, and school functioning. It provides valuable information for diagnosis, treatment planning, intervention, and monitoring progress over time. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about the Brown Executive Function Attention Scales. These are a set of assessment tools designed to evaluate executive function and attention-related behaviors in individuals ages 3 to adult. The Brown scales are based on Dr. Thomas E. Brown's theory of executive function and attention, which emphasizes the role of executive functions in regulating attention, behavior, and emotion. The scale assesses various aspects of executive function and attention, including sustaining attention, the ability to maintain focus and concentration over time, shifting attention, the ability to flexibly switch between tasks or mental sets, divided attention, the ability to attend to multiple tasks or stimuli simultaneously, working memory, the ability to hold and manipulate information in the mind for short periods, organizing and planning, activation and effort, the ability to initiate and sustain effort towards completing tasks, and finally, emotional self-regulation, the ability to regulate emotion and impulses. The Brown is used in clinical settings and in schools and can be used to monitor progress over time and evaluate the effectiveness of interventions. Next, please. The Vineland-3, the Vineland Adaptive Behaviors Scales is a standardized tool used to assess adaptive behavior in individuals from birth to adulthood. It measures a person's ability to function in everyday life across various domains, including communication, daily living skills, socialization, and motor skills. The Vineland-3 provides valuable information about an individual's strengths and weaknesses in adaptive functioning, helping clinicians and educators understand the level of independence and support needs. It is often used to make diagnoses. The Vineland-3 can help diagnose developmental disabilities such as autism spectrum disorder and other neurodevelopmental conditions by assessing an individual's adaptive behavior skills. By identifying areas of strength and areas needing support, the Vineland-3 helps professionals develop tailored intervention plans to address specific skill deficits and promote interventions. Next, please. And finally, we'll talk about the Social Skills Improvement System. It is a comprehensive multi-component program designed to assess and intervene in social skills and social emotional learning in children, adolescents, and adolescents ages 3 to 18-11. It encompasses assessments tools, interventions resources, and progress monitoring instruments. The assessment component is used to evaluate a child's social skills, problem behaviors, and academic competence. The assessments provide a baseline understanding of the child's strengths and weaknesses in social emotional functioning. There's also an intervention component based on the assessment results. The SSIS offers evidence-based interventions to target specific social skill deficits and promote positive social emotional development. There's also a skill development component that includes social competence, emotional regulation, empathy, perspective taking, communication, and looking at interpersonal relationship. It provides a system to collaborate with stakeholders and encourages fostering a supportive social environment, both at home and in educational settings. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Becky.
Hello, hello. So I am going to talk a little about speech and language assessments. Here you can see the array of speech language assessments we currently have. We have a couple of screeners and a print test, the PLS-5. I am going to talk a little bit more about our clinical assessments and not so much the screeners today. So the clinical evaluation of language fundamentals preschool 3 is suited for children ages 3 to 6'11". It's administered in English and it is a language assessment. So typically it determines eligibility for speech and language impairment, TBI, or developmental delays. It identifies a language delay or disorder that will limit the child's ability to manage the language demands of the classroom, and it is typically administered by a speech-language pathologist. Now, the administration and scoring of this test, the test can be done on Q Interactive, our iPad administration app. It's very convenient to use there, but you do also have the option to administer the test by paper and pencil, and you can score using the manual, or you can also score it using Q Global. Moving on to the PLS-5. The PLS-5 is best suited for ages birth to almost 8. It's administered in English, and again, it is a language assessment. It determines eligibility for speech and language impairment, TBI, or developmental delay, and its purpose is to identify a child with a language delay or disorders that interferes with communication. And again, it is typically administered by an SLP. The big difference with this test is that it only can be administered and scored using paper and pencil. So this test is available on DALS Plus. It's not currently available on DALS. So both of these tests look very similar at face value, but they are quite different and they provide a lot of different information. So I did want to kind of highlight what those differences really are and what child would be best suited for each assessment. So the PLS-5 is used to assess children with moderate to severe delays. So it provides more detailed information about the child's language skills when the child's functioning at a level where they're using sentence structures far below the age of age peers. They exhibit deficits across multiple language domains. They're placed in a supported classroom environments with or without adaptations, and they have difficulty participating in mainstream classroom settings due to limited language or social interaction skills. Whereas the SELF preschool 3 can be used to assess children with mild to moderate delays, and it provides more detailed information about a child's language skills when they use morphological and syntactic form that's somewhat below their age peers, when they exhibit deficits in 1 or 2 language domains, when they have difficulty mastering grade level curriculum requirements in a mainstream classroom with or without adaptations, and they have difficulty participating in classroom activities due to atypical social interaction skills. So with the PLS-5, we're really trying to figure out which early speech and language skills the child has required and what the gaps are in developmental language skills. And the SELF-P3, we're really trying to determine in a preschool setting if the student is able to handle the language demands of the classroom and which specific language domains can be considered language strengths and weaknesses. So as you can see, both of these tests really do add value to early childhood assessment. It's usually good to have both, and depending on the child, to pull out the test that's best suited for them. It's not really a one size fits all for either. Now the Goldman-Fristow test of articulation 3 and the Kahn-Lewis phonological analysis 3 is used for ages 2 to about 22. It's administered in both English and Spanish. It is a speech assessment, and it is meant to determine speech and language impairment. The Goldman-Fristow provides information about an individual's speech sound ability by sampling both spontaneous and imitative sound production in single words and connected speech, whereas the Kahn-Lewis is an analysis of the Goldman-Fristow. So it's used to analyze their speech development and phonological process usage. It is administered by a speech-language pathologist. It can be administered by paper and pencil, but I used to have nightmares when I was administering this test on paper pencil and would hear a child with the phonological errors, because I know I'd have to make that analysis doing paper pencil. But what's really nice and what we now offer moving into the new tech, into the new decade, we offer the analysis in that it be done completely on Q Global. So it does all the analysis for you, and also it's available for administration and scoring with the analysis on Q Interactive, which saves clinicians a tremendous amount of time, and something I've really appreciated as a clinician. Now I am going to go over the motor and sensory assessments. We are super excited because we've had a couple of new additions to our motor sensory portfolio. We have the BOT 3 coming out very soon. The MABC 3 was just released, and we have a couple of other assessments such as the M-Fun, the Berry VMI, the PD-CAT, and the Sensory Profile 2. So the BOT 3 is meant for children ages 4 to about 26. It's a comprehensive motor assessment, which measures fine motor, so fine motor precision, integration, manual dexterity, upper limb coordination, and then gross motor, which is bilateral coordination, balance, strength, dynamic movement. And there's an optional extended balance subtest. It takes about an hour to 90 minutes to complete. There are print and digital options, so you're able to administer this test on Q Global, which is the computer, the web-based platform. It's often jointly used between occupational and physical therapists, and it provides a comprehensive assessment of motor skills, and it's useful for goal setting and monitoring progress. And we have new supplementary clinical scores coming up for this test. And again, this is anticipated to be released this summer. Now, the MABC is for ages 3 to almost 26, so a little bit of a younger test. It's an assessment of gross and fine motor competence. It measures manual dexterity, aiming and catching, balance and locomotion, and it includes tests and checklists, caregiver, teacher, and self, and other. And the checklist is also available as a standalone product. The test administration is about 30 to 45 minutes. There's print and digital options, and it includes a non-motor factor score, and it's useful for identifying motor impairment. So the BOT 2 has tended to be the go-to motor assessments for many OTs and PTs in the US, and for good reason. It's comprehensive, it's reliable, and we've all known and loved it for years, but in some situations, the MABC 3 might be a better fit. For example, the age range of the BOT 2 is like 4 to 21, and the same tasks are used throughout the test. So a lot of times the kids at the younger end of the age range can struggle with the test items, which makes it hard to get a sense of what they are able to do. So the MABC has 3 age bands with the tasks for each age band designed to be developmentally appropriate. And so this makes it a great choice for the 3 to 4-year-olds who are difficult to assess with the BOT. And so similarly, if you have individuals who are delayed in their intellectual or language development or have difficulty paying attention, the shorter administration time and flexibility allowed in delivering task instructions can make the MABC worth considering over the BOT. And the MABC offers the checklist while the BOT does not. And the checklist is an excellent way to find out about an individual's motor skills in everyday situations, which is important to gain a complete picture of motor performance in order to set meaningful and client-centered goals. And again, that checklist is going to be available on your Q Global account. So it's covered in DALS. And so even if you don't administer the MABC and you do choose to administer the BOT on an older preschooler, you can still use that MABC as a standalone checklist to supplement the BOT. And the checklist also offers an alternative if it's not possible to administer the test because of time or resource constraints, or because the individual is simply not able to cope with the formal testing situation. So in an ideal world, you would have both the movement ABC and the BOT as part of your toolkit, and you kind of do with DALS. All right, so the PD-CAT is administered only on Q Global, our web-based platform. It's for children 1 month to about 21 years. It's an assessment of functional performance of mobility, daily activities, social and cognitive and responsibility. There is a computer adaptive questionnaire that's completed by the caregiver. It provides normed and criterion reference scores, and it's used for assessing ability to perform everyday life activities. It's useful for tracking progress, and we do have a screening version called the Speedy Cat that's available. The sensory profile 2 is for children ages birth to about 15. It's an assessment of sensory processing for infant, toddler, child in school. It's available in digital or print. There's a questionnaire that's completed by a caregiver or a teacher, and it's useful for analyzing the impact of sensory differences on participation in everyday activities, and it's useful for planning sensory-based interventions. And that concludes our presentation. We're going to take a couple of minutes for questions and answers. If my other presenters want to go off of mute, we'll read through some of the Q&A. Please feel free to drop any remaining questions you have into there. Our moderator, Sherry, also has added some links into the chat. So please feel free to go in and take those. Thank you for coming today. So it looks like most of our questions have been answered. It does look like there are a couple of questions asking if some of our cognitive tests were adapted onto Q Interactive, or if we have plans to adapt them to Q Interactive. As of right now, we do not. Fortunately, we do offer digital scoring for those assessments, but the tests still have to be administered by paper pencil. There was a question that was asked about the SSIS SEL giving goal suggestions that can assist case managers in writing goals. Ellen had answered that it does. Ellen, do you want to expand on that at all?
Actually, no, there's not much more to say. I mean, there is a great report, and it works with collaborators, teachers, all of that to kind of set goals that are based on those kinds of social skills that are needed to perform well in the classroom. So it's really targeted for the type of skills that child will need to effectively navigate in a classroom.
And there was a similar answer or a similar question for the BASC, if there were any intervention recommendations for the BASC.
Yeah,
and the answer is similarly, yes.
Yeah.
There are intervention suggestions. There was a question about the difference between the SSIS SEL and the SSIS, when it's better to use one versus the other. So Ellen had answered that the SEL attends to the social emotional learning component for that those skills needed to function well in the classroom. The SSIS SEL is a little bit of a newer assessment as well, with updated norms, and is, you know, from my understanding, a little more of an extension on the SSIS.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question about the ECSE Vineland. I'm not sure what that is. So I can't answer that.
There's a couple more open. How do we set up or access the Spanish Bracken and the Spanish translation of the Bracken 4? My district has DALS, but not the Plus. So that's a great question.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It looks like Sherry is looking to answer that, if you don't mind.
Okay, yep, no problem.
Sherry, go ahead.
Actually, that just means that you're answering live. So please
Oh,
go
My
ahead.
apologies.
Oh, okay, no worries. That is a great question. Yep, the English version is the only version that's currently available on Q Interactive. To administer the Spanish, you would have to purchase the record forms to supplement that test. And then you can use, as you're going through the test, you can use that Spanish record form as a reference on the side of using your clinician iPad for the English. So you can look at what the child's response is in Spanish, and then you can mark it correct as English so it can score for you in Q Interactive. Ellen and Deb, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Becky, you said exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What might be some good tools to use with autism? That is a fabulous question because we actually have an autism webinar coming up next. I believe that webinar is slated for April. I think it's in April.
Yes, it's in April.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kim, for clarifying. We do have a webinar that's coming in April and will be emailed to you like this one was. But some of the tools on the related services or SLP end would really be a test like the PLS-5 or the SELF Preschool 3, which would be a good measure on language. I know a lot of occupational therapists like to use some type of motor exam, such as the BOT or the MABC. The sensory profile 2 is also a really great measure to gain insight into the child's sensory functioning. And I'll let the psychs talk a little bit to the psychology instruments that they could use.
And
So
the Vineland 3 would be also a good choice.
Yeah, adaptive behavior is a good one.
and autism is a group of students for whom the Bracken can be useful depending on the age range, given that there is such limited expressive language requirements for that.
Yeah, it's a really nice receptive language assessment. Are the manipulatives of the PLS-5 used the same way when given on the DALS Plus? So the PLS-5 is only administered by paper and pencil. And so DALS Plus is not a different platform. It's just a subscription that you can purchase to get a discount on the paper and pencil assessment. So there's no difference in the way that it would be administered. And so the manipulatives stay exactly the same. The Vineland, so I think that there's a question about the Vineland SEEC being appropriate to be used. There's several questions.
Yeah, I actually don't have a lot of information on that. It would depend on when the norms and how old they are, but it's something we actually don't seem to have at Pearson.
Yeah, I believe the only Vineland we currently carry is the adaptive behavior assessment. And our social emotional assessment would fall more under the SSIS SEL. And that is what would be covered within the DALS subscription. Selena Oliver had asked, are there special credentials needed to give these tests? That is a very good question. There are special credentials for each assessment. So we have 3 tiers of credentials, with the top tier being a level C. That means that a school psychologist would need to be administering the test, or somebody with a doctorate degree in education. A B level would be somebody with their master's in special education or speech language pathology, and an A level would be a general practitioner, so somebody with just a bachelor's degree in education. So I think most of the tests that we reviewed over today are B level and above, with the exception of the Easy 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, the Easy 3, you do need a bachelor's degree, I think, to administer the test. However, the other assessments need to be ordered and administered by somebody with the master's degree or higher.
I also put a link to our qualifications page in answer to Selena's question and also in the chat. So if you have any questions after this or you're looking at other assessments, you can go ahead and review our qualifications policy.
Do the supplemental Spanish options for the Bracken assessments also indicate what the evaluator should say, or does it only assist in determining accuracy of what the student had said? I believe that the record form does give Spanish prompts to the student. It gives you the language you're supposed to use in Spanish. And there was information on the Bailey 4, and we will be sending you the slides after this presentation. All right, and I think that was a load of questions. We are just about at time, so I am going to share our next slide. If you want any more information on any of the assessments we've discussed, please reach out to your state's assessment consultant. You can also visit the pearsonassessments.com website to find our information or scan the QR code, and that will take you directly to the website. And you can bookmark that in your phone. I very much appreciate your attendance, along with my colleagues, Deb and Ellen. And please feel free to send any of the representatives any questions. If they don't know the answer, they will know somebody within the company that does. So we are always happy to assist.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks so much, guys.